Hi, I'm Mags McCleary and I'm National Coordinator here at AA2A. My colleague Andy Pearson is also here. Are you waving, Andy? Andy usually doesn't wave. Andy is Operations Manager here at AA2A, and we also have a guest, which is lovely. We have a current AA2A artist resident, Helen Thomas, and Helen is the current artist in residence at Leeds Beckett University, and I'll introduce Helen properly in a few minutes. So this is our AA2A Artist Residency Q&A, and we're very pleased to see so many of you here. The aim of the session is to give you an overview and answer your questions so you feel more informed about the AA2A residencies. And by the end, hopefully, you'll know whether this is for you, if it's something you're interested in, and you'll feel confident about how to apply and what to expect. So we have an hour. We're going to break this down into 3 parts. The first part, I will give you an overview of AA2A briefly, look at some common questions that the artists ask. The middle section, Helen will talk about her experience as an AA2A resident artist. And then the final section is for your questions. So do note down anything you want to ask as we go along. And then in that final section, you can either write them in the chat, if you can see the chat box, or we'll take questions from people that want to speak. So if you want to wave at us or use the waving hand emoji, we will spot you. It's fine for you to be screen off or screen on or whatever you prefer, but we will, as I say, we'll put everybody on mute initially just to cut out that background noise. And so you're all aware, we are recording this session and this will go on our YouTube channel. Oh, I hear somebody there. Have you put us all on? Yeah, we'll all be on mute. Bit of background noise. So if you have to drop out halfway through, don't worry, just email us and we'll send you the link to the recording. So I think we will start. We seem to have a good few people here. So the short overview of AA2A, we started 30 years ago. We've worked with approximately 70 universities and colleges, 70 in England, and we've had over 2,000 artists in residence so far. The residencies are in England only, you may notice, and that's because our funding comes from Arts Council England. So obviously they only support activity that happens in England. And the idea was always a pretty simple one. Artists have access to universities and colleges and get to use their amazing facilities and equipment in exchange for offering some sessions to students. And it all takes place during one academic year. So hopefully you can all see the slide that we've got up there, which is about eligibility and applying. I'm going to rattle through this quickly, but you don't need to worry about writing notes down. All the information is on the website, or it's going to be updated and placed on the website soon. So I will run through this now. So eligibility and applying. Who can apply and how do I apply? So the applications are not yet live. The application process goes live on the 24th of July. So in a couple of weeks, Friday, the 24th of July. And at that point, you'll see on our website, there is an application form. And the application process there's a short form on the website. You fill that in and then you're directed to the main application form. Alternative formats are absolutely fine. We say this every time. If you are not comfortable using the format as it is on the website, you can send in a video or a different format. You just need to let us know and we'll make that happen. Absolutely no problem. So who can apply and how do I apply? So the eligibility criteria is basically simple. It's on the website at the moment. Artists must be based in the UK for the duration of the residency. Artists must have at least 1 year of professional practice. So what that's about is we don't want somebody to go from school, they do foundation, they do a degree, they do AA2A, because one of the big things about AA2A is that the artists are sharing their experience of professional practice. They're sharing their experience of working as an artist. And obviously, if you've just gone through education straight through to AA2A, you don't have that yet. So if you've got 1 year of art practice, that's fine. You don't have to have been through the art school system. We've had lots of people that have come through AA2A that are self-taught. Absolutely no problem with that. You must have availability within the relevant academic year and commit to approximately 100 hours on site. And that is obviously across the whole academic year. So to help you visualise 100 hours, that would break down to maybe 4 or 5 hours per week across 20 or 25 weeks across the whole year. We understand that artists have very different working styles. So some of you might be freelance, you might have lots of flexibility. You might be able to go into your university or college half a day a week for the whole year, or you might want to do a big block of intensive work there for a month or two, and then you don't go in so much, and then you go in again. It's very flexible, and that is totally fine. Absolutely no problem with that. How do I apply? We've talked about that. Who can apply? We've talked about that. Is it only for fine artists? No, it's not only for fine artists. We have artists from across all sorts of practices: illustration, photography, print, ceramics, installation, digital. The only thing is it's not a commercial opportunity. So you can't go in and use AA2A as a way to, make your book, which you're then going to sell as a commercial venture, if you like. And that's because of the funding. The Arts Council England are funding us to do this, but it's not about making money. Obviously, you can make money from anything that you sell that you've made during the process, but it's not a commercial opportunity. Can I apply if I've done it before? Yes, you can. We've had artists that have done AA2A 4, 5, 6 times. No problem at all with that, but you do need to leave a gap. You can't do it consecutive years. You need to leave a gap of 2 years. What should an artist application statement contain? A clear description of your practice, which facilities you would like to use, how you intend to engage with students, but keep it realistic. Maybe don't go in and say, I'm going to organise a symposium, there are going to be 500 people, I need a lecture theatre. The timetable at the colleges and the universities is pretty tight. So you will have to fit in around the timetable that's already in existence. The students really like it when the artists go in and talk to them, and the staff really like it as well. But we need to kind of keep it realistic in as much as the timetable will already be in place. We will be putting guidelines on our website. We do that every year. So once the application process is live, there are guidelines on our website, and you can have a look at that to see what the artist statement should contain. What are the deadlines? Well, the deadlines vary because we are hoping to have, we think we've got a bumper year. We think we will have 17, 18 colleges and universities with us this year, which is a really great uplift for us, more than the current year. And each of those organisations, each of those institutions have got their own deadline. So once you've had a look at the website and you've seen which universities and colleges are taking part, you will then be able to go on and have a look at what their deadline for applications is. They are usually in September. There may be 1 or 2 that have an end of August deadline. There may be 1 or 2 that have an early October deadline, but the bulk of them are going to be in September. That information has not yet been released because we haven't got all that information back yet, but we will have it soon. Can overseas artists apply? Not unless they are living in the UK during the residency year. We have a small fund, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is called the Artist Support Fund. And with the Artist Support Fund, if you're eligible, you can pay for things like materials and travel and childcare. Unless you're a UK permanent resident, you wouldn't be able to apply for that support fund either. So although AA2A is a slight misnomer, we call ourselves an artist residency, but it's not a residency in the traditional sense. You don't get to you don't get to live there. You don't provide accommodation. So you'd need to bear that in mind if you were interested in applying from overseas. How close to the host institution do I need to live? I would say you need to live a sensible distance away from the host institution. That's my answer. Because we get a lot of applications from artists who are very keen, very enthusiastic, which is brilliant. But if you've got a place at a university to go and do AA2A, but you've got a bit of a pain in the neck of a journey, if it's a bit arduous, it's a couple of trains, you've got to change trains, the train gets cancelled, or you want to drive over there, but there isn't a parking space. I often talk to staff at the colleges and universities and I ask about parking spaces and they just laugh. There aren't parking spaces. You need to be realistic about how you're going to get there and how you're going to get back and how you're going to do that on multiple days, different days, across the winter months, maybe travelling through the winter months, if you're relying on trains to do a long journey, that might not work out. Can we have the next slide, please, Andy? The residencies. So some questions about the residencies. And do artists get a studio space? The answer to that is pretty much no, you don't get a studio space. A lot of the host universities and colleges are really, really, really tight for space. So we can't promise you that you're going to get a studio. Occasionally, some of the host universities a bit of space will come up, but on the whole, it's a no. That's just not part of the deal. There just isn't the space available, particularly if you're thinking about some of the host universities and colleges are taking 4, 5, 6 artists. You can imagine they're not going to have that amount of spare space available. What we do hope for, again, we can't guarantee it, is that you would have some kind of storage space. You might get some shelves, cupboards, something like that. So that the idea is that you're not having to take everything in and then take it out again every single day, because that would be a nuisance. Do artists get funding paid? You don't get paid to take part in AA2A, but what you do get is the opportunity, if you're eligible, to apply for what we were talking about a minute ago, the Artist Support Fund, ASF. And the Artist Support Fund is to cover things like childcare, travel, materials, and costs associated with disability. And there are eligibility criteria for this. And those are, this fund is for artists who are on low income, or for artists who are on benefits associated with low income, or for artists that have got costs associated with disability. So that's what the Artist Support Fund is for. And we would pay that out. Maybe 50% of the artists are eligible for that. And that can vary from between about £400 up to about £700 per person. It may be a little more for costs associated with disability. And if you are offered a place at one of the universities, we'll send you all the information about that. And it's a very, very simple process to apply for that. Can artists learn a new skill they've never tried before? Not so much. That's not really what AA2A is about, because if you think about it, you're going into the university or the college as a self-sufficient professional artist. The staff and the technicians, their priority is always going to be the students. They're always going to prioritise the students. And whilst they're very welcoming of the AA2A artists, they really like having the artists on site, they are just not going to have the time to teach you something new from scratch. So this is all very clear on the application form, but if you're interested in doing, say if you want to work in the print room, you want to do etching or screen printing or whichever type of print you want to do, you need to let us know how proficient you already are in that. Because if you're coming in saying, I've never done screen printing before and I really would like to try it, it's not really going to work, because the teaching staff and the technical staff are just not going to have time to show you that from scratch. So this is more about artists that want to come in and develop their existing skills. And that sort of leads on to the next point. What kind of facilities and equipment do the artists tend to access? Well, it tends to be things that you wouldn't have at home. So maybe a kiln or printing presses or some sorts of digital equipment. Those tend to be the things that artists are accessing, or laser cutters, dark rooms, the fancy things that you wouldn't necessarily have at home. What's the selection process and who chooses the artist? Well, that is all down to the host university or college. We don't, at AA2A, we don't take any part in that. The idea being that it's those staff members that are going to be working with you and seeing you day to day. So they get to choose their own artists, and they get to choose artists that they think are going to work together with their staff nicely, going to work with their students well. Maybe they will choose artists that have got complementary skills and experience, or they might choose a diverse group of artists, maybe somebody that's not long graduated, with that, maybe some artists that are mid-career or even later on that have been practicing artists for longer. So the hosts will choose their artists. We don't play a part in that. So there'll be academic staff, and often a technician will help to make that selection. When it comes to the interview process, sometimes there's it's not exactly, it wouldn't be a formal interview, it's more of a meeting, but that might be online or it might be in the building. Sometimes the host might invite somebody from an arts organisation to come in, who a local arts organisation might come in and help with that selection process. Is it full time? How many days a week do I have to be there? Well, I've touched on that. It's not full time. Nobody's expecting you to go in there every single day. That wouldn't be possible. And I've mentioned 100 hours across the year. So that would, as I say, that would equate to sort of 4 or 5 hours a week across 20 to 25 weeks to get up to approximately 100 hours. What we find is that artists very often end up doing more. So the average last year was about 130 hours per artist, but it depends on your availability. 100 hours is a good number for us to work to, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to go through the whole recruitment process. Artists are selected and they go in for a couple of days and then nobody ever sees them again, because that's just a waste of time. That's a shame. It's a waste of an opportunity. So we do ask that you commit and that you look at your time quite carefully, see whether you are going to be able to commit that time to going into the university. Is it a full year? It's a full academic year, but by the time, if you think back, I said that the application deadlines are mainly in September, so the schemes often don't start until October. So it's a full year, but you may not actually get into the building until October. And the schemes, again, like I said, they've got different end dates. So they might finish in May, they might finish in June, they might finish in July. So it's a full academic year, but with a bit of flexibility at either end. How many universities and colleges are there, and where are they located? Well, we are just tying up the final loose ends on this. The current year we had 12. This coming year, 26-27, we think we're going to have 18. We might have 19. I wanted to tell you, Andy says no. We're going to do a big reveal on social media next week. Sorry. I think we can say that all, apart from maybe one of the current year's colleges and universities, are back with us again, and there are going to be a couple of new ones as well. So that will all will be revealed very soon. I can't see the bottom point on there, Andy. Can you lift it up a bit? Or maybe you can't, actually. I can't see what the bottom point is.
It's do artists have to teach?
Yeah. Do artists have to teach? Artists don't have to teach, no. What we want to be quite clear about is we're not sending you in there as substitute teaching staff. That's not what AA2A is about. But we do, as part of the deal, ask that artists commit to offer 4 sessions with students. And a session can be as formal or as informal as you like. It could be just a talk, it could be a workshop, it could be a demo, whatever you feel like is appropriate for you. But you're not going in there to teach. You're not going to be a teacher. So that was a very, very quick overview of AA2A. A lot of information. Don't worry if you didn't get it all. It's all on the website, and the application packs, when they're up, you'll see it all there. Details will be up soon. So now moving on, probably the more interesting bit, I'd like to welcome Helen Thomas, who is an artist based in Wakefield, and Helen is an AA2A artist in residence at Leeds Beckett University this year. So hello and welcome to Helen, and thank you for being here today. And would you like to start off by telling us a bit about your practice? And we'll put the images up of your work.
Oh yeah, there aren't many images because we had a little shift around thanks to Zoom updating. So excuse the lack of visual content for this. I'm a painter. I'm based at the Art House in Wakefield. Um, I work in response to plants in the environment with a focus on the unplanned. In the background, you can see one of my large paintings. That's a piece on paper and it's work made in acrylic. So I work at varying scales, sometimes really quite small paintings. And then the piece that's behind me at the moment is 1.5 meters by 2 meters. So I did a residency at Leeds Beckett. I came to the Q&A online session last year, and that was quite a turning point for me because I was aware of AA2A before, but when I attended the Q&A session, that was a point where I thought, actually, I'd really like to give this a go. And I think it was a very big contributing factor for me to actually put in an application. To be honest, wasn't quite sure, and this had been one of the things that had put me off previously, was how to apply for AA2A as a painter. Um, so the artist that spoke last year, her specialism was ceramics, and she'd done her residency at York St John, where they have a kiln, and it was a very good fit. I just wasn't quite sure as a painter how I would best make use of a residency that didn't have a studio space, and yeah, how I would make use of the facilities with the skills that I had. So what my very early starting point was, I read through all of the details that were available on the AA2 website, and then I read them again. And then I saved all of the questions offline onto like a word processing document. And I worked through them there, and I'd highly recommend that. One, it means that you've got a copy for your records, which I think you kind of get through anyway, but it's just a really useful thing to be able to do it when you've just got some time to think about it, get yourself familiar with those questions, and then you can kind of go back to them when it's, when it suits you. The questions, I don't know whether the application form will be the same this year. Last year, you had to kind of rate your experience. So my approach was to be very honest in my application, flag up any weaknesses almost, but just be honest about what experience that I had, and that carried through. So I was really delighted when I got an interview, and also super delighted when I was actually offered a residency. So there were 4 of us at Leeds Beckett, and this was the first year that Leeds Beckett has been part of the AA2A programme. So there was lots of learning and finding our ways. We all had an induction day, which was a really lovely thing to be able to all be in the same room to start off, because we've all been in at different times with different availability, but actually getting a chance to meet up was a really nice thing. Our coordinator also set up a WhatsApp group for the 4 of us and him to communicate, and that was really helpful. Other institutions may have different approaches, but that's been really useful. So I went in with the thought that I would work with greater immediacy, and possibly work on a smaller scale. I was thinking about how the limitations, as it were, of the residency. I haven't actually got a photograph, I don't think, on the ones that I've sent through to Mags and Andy, but I started out by having a little bit of time in the print studio and wanting to explore monotypes. And I'd done that before, but not in the way that I wanted to do. So I had a little bit of a play and it wasn't quite working out. And I decided better just leave it and move on to something else. I'd got lots of ideas about working across multiple surfaces with my paintings. And I had various approaches that I wanted to explore in 3D. So I kind of jotted quite a lot of those down, went and had a chat with one of the learning support team, who were absolutely brilliant. We had a very lovely creative conversation, and before I knew it, suddenly we were on the process of making something which had been knocking around in my head for several years and had no idea that I would actually get a chance to make. So this image that we've got on screen is kind of the end product of my residency. It was made partly on site and it was made partly back in my studio. The working title for this is Structure for a Painting. So it's a piece, it is painted rather than printed. It's made on birch ply and it's across 15 angled slats. So if you walk into the room one way, you're kind of looking through the structure. If you look straight on, or if you look from the left, you're kind of piecing together the image. So one thing that I realised would be very useful for working on this residency was working in a modular kind of way. So something that didn't take up this amount of space. This is actually 2 meters high and 1.5 meters wide and about 15 centimeters front to back. And I didn't expect that I would make a large piece. And that was a good expectation. You can't necessarily go in knowing that you're going to produce a large piece of work. But I was kind of feeling my way as I went along, and this is what I ended up with the opportunity to make. So I kind of front loaded, as it were, my time in the academic year. I spent quite a lot of time on site in autumn and winter because I'd picked up from the 3D team that as soon as it got towards like partway through the year, as people were working towards their final shows, the workshop gets very busy. So I was kind of playing it by ear, but it was fairly quiet initially, and I made the most of that. They were very accommodating with the staff, the academic staff and the learning support staff. They were really brilliant. I would highly recommend being just as flexible as you can. Some tips if you are applying, just to bear in mind for that optimistic thing that you're going to be successful, is start a tally of the time that you spend in the on site in the institution, because AA2A want to know how much time you've been there, and it's much easier to just, whether it's in the back of a notebook or on a little notes in your phone or whatever, just to make a note of how many hours and the dates, and then that will help you keep track of where you're at. One thing that I did before I applied was I did a journey plan to see where was feasible for me to get to, how long it would take to get there, and also it allowed me to figure out what the costs were going to be for doing that. So I have an eye condition, which means that I can't drive. So I did a public transport journey plan, just so I'd got an idea, how long is it going to take out of my day, what's going to be practical and realistic. My studio is like a 5-minute walk, 15-minute train journey, and then a 25-minute walk. So it's all in all, it ends up being about an hour door to door from my studio to Leeds Beckett. And that was doable, but I do strongly recommend that you're realistic about how long it's going to take you to get there. To also bear in mind keeping some flexibility, particularly at the start of your residency. So there's a bit of finding your way. It might be you personally, it might be you and the organisation. But rather than thinking that you're going to jump in and get started immediately, just be prepared that there's kind of some setup time in terms of things like getting your access card, getting all the systems set up so that you can actually be on site and function. So the contact that we had, initially I was really keen. As soon as I was there, I was like, oh, can I kind of walk around with you? But actually, initially the staff don't know you, and they need to take a little bit of time to get to know you and to see how you function. So I hadn't realised this, but it's quite an element of trust. Obviously, the staff have interviewed you, but they're responsible for their students, and they just want to make sure that if you're going to have time with the students, that that's all going to be comfortable and okay, and there's not going to be any awkwardness there. So it was actually quite, for our residency, we were quite a way through the academic year before we had contact, organised contact with the students. I don't think they'll necessarily be able to do it this year if they're taking part in the scheme again. We were very fortunate that a little bit of space was carved out in the studio, which meant that that was somewhere that we could just leave materials or leave work in progress. So that was very useful. It's not a given though. So yeah, you kind of have to be prepared that you might have to be carting things backwards and forwards. The contact that we had with students was we were invited to be part of a midterm walk around, and that was a really good opportunity and quite exciting. That was, what time was that? I think that was around March time. So it was really exciting to see the students who were approaching, like the BA students who were approaching their final show, and see where they were at, and then be able to go back to the degree show and see what had developed in that period of time. And that was a really good experience. One of the things that I wanted from AA2A, as well as the opportunity, was the to access the facilities, was just to get an idea of what's the landscape like for students now. So I finished my undergrad in 1992 and the landscape has changed massively. So that was a really good experience. We were also asked to do a talk about our practice. The four of us did that over 2 weeks and in 2 sessions. And we had really good feedback on that. I think we all had quite a similar approach. We were all very down to earth. So the talks that I remember when artists visited were all very much, I'm here, it's all established, and I'm doing very well, thank you. Whereas our approach was a bit more of the journey of our professional and creative practice. And the students responded really well to that. They were really grateful to have those kind of insights, and that kind of opened up for discussions about professional practice. And then also with Leeds Beckett this year, they have a space which is kind of like a gallery space, but it's not open to the public. So we were invited to a meeting and asked for our availability for a week each in this space to work with the students. And that actually took place after the BA had finished their time. So some students had left and gone back, but actually all of us ended up with students to work with, and we had different approaches. So one artist's approach was kind of a sort of an invitation to curate with them on the project that they'd done across the academic year. 2 of us had an approach where we used it more as a kind of a studio space, a kind of reflective and sharing space for collaborative and just exploration. And then, so that was a really good thing to do. And then we also spotted that there was another week available. So the AA2A artists, none of us actually wanted to directly impose the work that we'd made on site. On those weeks, we wanted to allow space for the students to breathe and develop and come up with new ideas. So we carved out the final week as a showcase week where we could invite people to see work. So that was quite a learning curve. It actually, because the exhibition space at Leeds Beckett isn't open to the public, I learned that it takes at least 4 weeks to arrange an event where you want members of the public to come along. So I did lots of learning about how to kind of go along with the, I guess, bureaucratic processes within a host institution. Which was it was a good experience. Now it's behind me, but it was really worth it. So we were only actually able to open our exhibition for 2 hours to the public, but it was worth doing for that. And we had a turnout on an incredibly hot day. Thanks, Mags, for being able to come along to that. And also it meant that we had the opportunity to document that exhibition as well, so it shares wider than the amount of people who were able to visit. So the slides, can we just go back to the slides, Andy? Would that be okay?
Yes, just give me one moment.
Put him on the hop there, Helen.
Sorry. I know, and I just ignored them while you were going through them, kind of. So this is one of the first things that I made in the 3D workshop, and this is like a maquette. This is about 40 centimeters high. It's kind of a 3D visual discussion with one of the staff members to just get from paper to 3D to have an idea, is this what we're trying to do, and how might we go about it? Next one, please. This is, I spent some time, I took some of my large images in and photographed them on site. And then I spent a little bit of time in digital print editing those photographs. And then I got several prints of them, sort of about A2, which I brought back to my studio. And I wanted to get sort of an idea that was in between the maquette and my final painting of how this might work. So I got several copies of the same print done, and I put them on foam board and I cut them up. So this is a very cobbled together blue tack and bottom of my shelf and scrap of paper kind of maquette. And I did do another arrangement. So I was trying to figure out how to expand the painting across the full width. So I did another little experiment with these printouts that just made me feel visually nauseous. So I realized that that wasn't going to be the thing. This is in the white column space where we showed our work. And this is as you walking in from the right-hand side. So I wanted people to enter the space and look through the work before they started to put it together. Next one, please. This is the view as you look straight on. And this is the view looking from the left backwards. So what I did was on site, made use of the facilities in order to be able to get these pieces of wood cut. So there are some things that you would do yourself in 3D. There are some bits of equipment that you can't actually use, but actually the opportunity to be able to get 15 pieces of wood cut perfectly straight was amazing. And there was kind of the team, as I said, were very generous. They were kind of very generous with their thinking space in terms of how actually we were going to make this. I don't know whether I've got any other photos.
I think that's all of them.
That's it. Okay. So what I did when I got to a certain stage, oh, there we go. So that's the building. That's Leeds Beckett. The little one that's like on a workbench. So this is just a little snapshot. I didn't actually take lots of photographs. I do have more that we weren't able to get to today. So this is a proud moment of having managed to drill 30 holes that exactly lined up to put the fixings through in the end of these planks that I was working on. So there was quite a lot of conversation that went on, and my confidence in being in a 3D space massively improved over the time. I didn't start out feeling comfortable. I was kind of out of my comfort zone, but I just persevered with it, and the team was so great. So what I did was I made the actual structure there and did a dry run of assembling the piece, and then I brought the work off-site back to my studio in Wakefield, where I did the painting, and then I arranged for transport back for the showcase. I didn't try and paint there because I knew I needed to be able to do other work in my studio, and also I just didn't have a safe way or a big enough space to actually do that work on site. So I think that's kind of an overview, if that's okay.
I was just going to stop you actually, but I think if you're at the end of what you were going to say, that's good timing, because I'm seeing a couple of comments here in the chat. So Sam says thanks for sharing your insights, and would like to ask, did you tap into any other subject departments or stay within the art department? And were you able to attend lectures or collaborate and discuss your work with staff? So there's other bits to the question, but the first one is, did you go to any other departments, and did you go to lectures and talk about your work with staff?
Not many other departments. Nipped into photography, which fine art gets a chance to access. I liked the idea of collaborating. and accessing other departments, but it just didn't quite work out in the time either that I had or over the academic year. Towards the end, particularly when I was working in the white column space, it's kind of a goldfish bowl of a space, so it has full wall windows. And there were a couple of people who kind of called in and had really nice chats at that point, people who were working in performance, for example. So that was really lovely. I think it will depend on the institution. It might depend on what subjects they cover. It might depend on how that institution is set up. So I was within Leeds School of Arts, within Leeds Beckett. The approach that our coordinator took was we're kind of independent artists. So kind of basically most of the time left us to get on with things. Because we're practicing artists, not students. But if we needed anything, they were there to kind of help out, or answer questions or signpost us. But I think the whole that the staff are so full on and so busy with their students that actually they haven't got a lot of extra time to necessarily be sharing information across the wider university about what's happening. So that would be up to you, really. What other point? That was loads of great questions. What else was on there?
Where did the most valuable conversations happen? This is part of the same question.
Oh, so surprise for me was actually when I was in the 3D workshop. Most of my conversations were with architecture students because when I was in there at the time, there were more architecture students in there than any other students. So I had a lot more chats with them than I did with fine art students for quite a long time. And that was great. So that brought new bits to my research and my practice, and really enjoyed that. Had really nice, just because they'd managed to carve out a little bit of space on the shop floor, as it were, on the studio floor. Gradually students got used to us being there. Every time we were in, we were always saying hello to people, so they just got used to us being around. The staff had put a poster up with our photographs and our little blurb, so even if we didn't meet, by the time they saw us, they knew who we were. So those informal conversations were really nice. And then when we did each had our workshop weeks, that gave us more sort of sometimes one-to-one time, or small group chat time. So that was really good. And as part of that, I'd been offering from the beginning of the residency the opportunity to do a studio visit, and it just hadn't worked out. So I did that as part of my workshop week. And that was a really lovely thing to be able to invite this group of students to come and visit, and then they could, ask questions about practice sort of within a work setting as well.
Oh, amazing. I'd forgotten that the students had come over to Wakefield to see you.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
There is a lecture programme. I went to a couple of them. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about them until last minute. So there were some I'd have loved to have gone to, and I just couldn't because I'd already made other arrangements. So I'd have liked to have gone to more of those, but sometimes there was a little bit of frustration that I was on site. I'd made arrangements to come back to Wakefield and they were in the evening. But again, that will depend on the host institution. One thing that it wasn't a challenge, but it's just to be aware of that you're not necessarily part of the communication system that the students have. So there were times when it's like, oh, it would have been nice to have known about that. But the staff were really brilliant at trying to drop us emails to let us know of events that were coming up and invite them to be part of those.
And I think that would be different at different colleges and different universities. They've all got a slightly different system of sharing information, haven't they?
Yeah, I think some universities have like a weekly or a monthly lecture, and you know what the date is. Yeah. But I think just because of the way it's set up, it wasn't quite so easy to predict when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, I've got lots more questions coming in. This is good. From the same person, what has had the longest lasting impact on your practice? And did the residency challenge or change your thinking or practice or work in any way?
Oh, I'd got a much better understanding of how tough it is for students. I mean, really, yeah, interesting to see how they're trying to navigate like earning a living and doing in theory what's meant to be a full-time course and how they go about that. Yeah, that was quite an eye-opener. And also it's very easy to just sort of forget what it was like to be at that stage. And just fascinating to see how different people are navigating that. I think the biggest thing was just being able to realize something that I hadn't expected, but also realizing that being flexible and being able to kind of being on the hoof a little bit, being able to respond to circumstance was interesting. I'm really sorry. I've realized on my Zoom settings it keeps moving my camera, so I do apologize for that. I'm changing it. It's just some bit of technology is just moving around.
You can see you and hear you. It's fine.
Yeah. So things that I found tricky to navigate were not being based on site, how to actually book into the various technical spaces. And each one had a different approach. So, for example, print, you had to email on a Monday morning, they opened their emails and checked and sorted out the bookings for the next 2 weeks. Other places you had to call in and just scroll on the whiteboard and see what was available. So they all had different approaches. And when I wasn't on site, I found it really tricky to try and get started with that, particularly as for a while we didn't actually have access cards. It took a while for those to come through. So initially it was lots of knocking on doors and asking for forgiveness whilst people put up with us as we
a bit stop-start to begin with.
Yeah, and as soon as we got access cards, we all felt very different. It's like, oh right, we're meant to be here. We can get into the space. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm just looking at other questions. How did you present your work in the portfolio to send in with your application? Well, I think that's quite clear on the application form. Actually, you upload work, and we give instructions about that, don't we, Andy, about how to upload your work as part of your application form.
Yeah, there was I think last year you could upload up to 8 images. So again, highly recommend going through the application form. I'm not sure how it's set up. If it's one way you have to put information in before you go to the next page, I just type in test on anything that needs a response, copy all the questions onto a Word document so I can see all the availability, all the criteria, everything that I'm going to need to get together. And then obviously don't submit that, but then you can see how big are the images, how many do you need, and you can have a nice calm offline think about all of that, how you want to put it together. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Somebody is asking, Hinarco is asking, are you allowed to apply for a few unis or just one? Do we all apply to each uni on our own, or does the application form have a section to state which unis you want to be placed for? So you can apply for more than one university. We've been talking about this just recently. In the past, people have applied for 1 or 2 or 3, and we think that is about the right number, because what we want is for people to look quite carefully at where they are applying, because all the different universities and colleges will have different facilities and equipment, and they will all be a different distance away from where you live. So you are able to apply for more than one. You can, I would suggest it's better to do a separate application for each one, because you are going to be responding to what kind of space and facilities they've got. But it will become clear when you look at that application form. It will become clear. Andy's already answered that one. It's good to know that tech support is. I've got my glasses on. Studio visit was a lovely idea. Okay, here's another question from Rob. Are you expected to know exactly what you'll be creating, or is it enough to know what areas, themes you'd like to explore?
Well, from my perspective, I wrote a proposal that had quite a lot of flexibility in it that gave an idea of my intentions. But until I actually went for my interview, I didn't really know how I might be able to realise that. And then once I got the place, I started off trying to follow what I thought that was going to be, and soon thought, do you know what? I've got this opportunity. I want to make the most of it. I can either go through the year and try bits and pieces, or I can have, for me, I found that there was an opportunity to make a piece that really did change my practice. Or yeah, it was a huge opportunity. So I think you need to be realistic about what it is that you want to do and how you're going to go about doing it. Because obviously the people who are selecting want to know you're not just going to walk in and kind of be tootling around. It's like when you go to 3D workshop or to any of the spaces, I think you need to know what you want to do that day. You need to know what is your aim. Even if your aim is to do experimental monotypes, you kind of need to know what it is you want to do with the space and the time, I think. Yeah, but it can change. It doesn't mean that you're stuck to exactly what you said. It's you're a professional artist. It's your choice what you're going to do with it.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good answer. Another question is from Sam again, who's doing loads of questions today. Sam says, if you were applying again, what would you emphasise or frame differently in your application?
Oh,
interesting.
Do you know, I personally wouldn't frame it that differently. Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying as I'm thinking about it now. It might be when I came to the application form that with time for reflection, I would think differently about it. But at the moment, I think I would have a fairly similar approach. One thing that I did get caught out with in a really nice way, when I went for my interview, I booked my transport there and I booked my transport back so that I was getting the best deal that I could. And what I didn't know about was that I would be invited to actually do a tour of the workshops after the interview, which was brilliant. I don't know whether all facilities do it or whether they always do it, but I had the opportunity. So I just bought another ticket home. But with hindsight, I would have allowed more flexibility on the day that I went for my interview.
Oh, that's a good tip.
And when I did the walk around, I just thought, oh my goodness, if I'd have been able to look around this before I did my application, it would have been amazing.
That's a good point, actually, because we ask all the universities and colleges to describe the facilities and space and equipment that they've got, but it's not the same as having a walk around.
Yeah. So I was so giddy when I did the walk around. Really hope I get this.
Oh, well, you did. Happy days. Lovely. So it's just coming up to 2:25. So we've got 5 minutes left. Has anybody else got any other questions that they want to chuck in at the moment? I've got a few other things that we can cover, unless anybody's got anything else.
I've got one thing to say, which I haven't necessarily said. You can probably gather, but it was an absolutely brilliant opportunity. If you're thinking about it, not sure whether to apply, just have a really good look. Make sure that it's feasible for you to kind of get there and back. But yeah, really good opportunity. The other thing that was really lovely was getting to meet the other resident artists. So yeah, highly recommend it. It was a really good experience.
That's good. I didn't pay you to say this is really. I haven't actually paid, Helen. So I've got another question here. Do the colleges and universities select residents that align with the college's need, e.g. to support students' learning? I think my feeling is that when the colleges and universities are selecting the artists, they select the artists whose work they resonate with. That's my feeling. Some of the colleges and universities have got particular areas that are maybe underused. So, for example, we've had situations where maybe a college or a university has got a ceramics area and they don't have a ceramics specialist or something like that. And so they want to bring in an artist who's going to reanimate that space. So I would say that it's not so much about they're picking artists to support student learning in the way that I was reading it. It's more about what space is available, what facilities are available. But I think they just choose the artists whose work they really like. You put in a strong proposal, they like your ideas, they really like your practice. I think that's how they choose the artists, really. Are deferred entries possible, or should artists wait until next year? I don't know if I've had that question before, actually, deferred entries. I'm not sure that anybody's going to be able to defer until next year. I don't know. Let me think about that one. I can see that's from Emily. Emily, if you want to drop me a line and tell us your situation, our email addresses are all on the website. I'm just going to put the website address in there, actually, so that you can all see the website address. So somebody else, Stephanie is asking, how did you spend your 100 hours? Was it all chats and then some workshop time?
No, it was a lot of workshop time. There was a lot of for me, actually, a lot of it was just quite hard graft, things that weren't necessarily very exciting, but allowed me to do something very exciting. So sanding, varnishing, quite a lot of drawing ideas out in my notebook and trying to figure out how to realize them. A lot of creative conversations. I mean, you really do need to be able to fit in and go and know what you're doing. You can't kind of rely on the time, because it really is focused on the students. They are the priority. That's what they're there for. But yeah, it was very much a lot of making time in the workshops. And then it actually was quite a lot of time with the students in terms of when this idea was proposed for having a week. And I don't know whether they would do it the same next time. I'm not sure. But at first I was like, oh my goodness, that's a big chunk of time to carve out of my practice. But there was always kind of flexibility, and nobody was actually saying you have to come and do this full week. So within that week, I think we found when students were most likely to be around and sorted our timings that, and we found connections with the students that we were going to work with, so it became a conversation about who was going to be around when and what times would suit. So it was a good mix of time with the students, and I think we all really wanted to give back. We all wanted to spend some time with the students and have those conversations. But yeah, a lot of making. That was the priority for me.
That sounds good. Okay, we are about out of time, so I want to say huge thanks to Helen. So thank you very much. It's been brilliant getting your perspective. Super interesting, and I'm so pleased that it went swimmingly for you at Leeds Beckett. As we said at the start, that was their first year with AA2A, and I think you've all done a cracking job. So thank you so much, and thanks for coming along today. As I said at the start, the application process is going to go live on the 24th of July. We will be able to let you know very soon who all the confirmed host universities and colleges are. If you've got any questions, you can email us. Andy and I are happy to answer your questions. We're a very small team. We're all part-time, so you may not get an answer immediately, but we'll reply as soon as we possibly can. You'll find a lot of the information that you need on the website. I've put the website address in the chat. It's just aa2a.org, very easy. And we'll be updating that over the next couple of weeks to reflect any changes that are happening this year. But I hope you found that useful and apply to AA2A. And we hope to be seeing some of you next year. Thank you very much for attending. Bye for now.